This is a quick video to show you how you can use Excel to analyze thin qualitative data, the kind of data you might get in a mixed methods project. This is based on a real paper. This is the paper, Exploring University Student Perspectives of a Challenge-Based Curriculum, published in late 2025. In short, the study asked students whether they felt that their subject-based degree helped them navigate local and global challenges, whether they'd like more challenge-based learning on these topic areas, and if so, what format they would like the learning to take. Small study, only 60 participants. And because it's mixed methods, there's quant sections and qual sections. And because of that, actually the different qual sections are analysed separately. And what I want to do is focus in on question 2. Question 2 very simply asked participants to tell us more about the format they would like their learning to take if they were going to learn more about these local and global challenges that we all face. Only 24 participants took part. And what I just want to do is kind of show you how we got from the raw data to this paragraph, which was published in the paper. So if you want to do that, the first thing you do is you need to download that data. So the data was collected online in Qualtrics. So the first thing we do is we go into Qualtrics, and in Qualtrics, this is the original project. You go to data and analysis. I've actually got that open in that next tab here. This is the data. You then go export data, and that downloads it in whatever format you want. I want to pick Excel, and I want to export as values, and then you click download, and it downloads it. Now, I'm actually not going to do that here because I've already downloaded the data, and I've just cleaned the data a little bit. So here is the original data, slightly changed to remove any participant characteristics. We've got some demographic information here, and then we've got some answers to the main quantity questions here. Over here, we have the 2 qual questions that we're gathering information on. Now, the first thing to do is to respect our data. We want to keep this original data sheet in the form it arrives in and be able to trace back to this original data sheet when we're doing other work on this data set. So the way to do that is just to create a key in this data sheet. So we select the first column, we right click, we click insert, we enter the word key. We type in 1 or we type in 2, we select both of those, and then we just drag that bottom right corner for all the data we have in this sheet, which takes us down to here, 158 subjects. And then we've got the ability to trace back to this original sheet, no matter what else we do. That's our original data. What we now want to do is copy that original data and move it into a sheet so we can start reducing it down and analyzing it. So we click on this little button here in the top left-hand corner. We copy by pressing Control-C. We then move into this empty sheet 1, click on cell A1, press Control-V to paste. All of our data is now there. If we click back to the original sheet, we see it looks exactly the same, as it should do at the moment. But now what we do in sheet 1 is we reduce it down, so we're only looking at the information we want. So we get rid of the demographic stuff. We get rid of the quantity stuff because that's not what we're looking at here. We get rid of one of those qual questions, and we just focus in on that second qual question. We delete everything else. Suddenly, everything looks a lot more concise and workable with. Now, what you'll also notice here is we've got a lot of gaps. There are a lot of participants who did not provide any data to this question. What this also means is actually we have a lot of participants who actually didn't provide any data for the study at all. They just clicked on the study and that registers. So we need to find a useful way of deleting those is by just using a very simple Excel command called len for length. So again, we right click, we insert, we type in len here so we know what we're doing, and we type in a very, very simple formula, equals len, and then after the brackets, we just put in C3. We're on row 3, we're typing in B3, and we're interested in the contents of C3. We close the brackets on that, we hit return. Understandably, we get a 0 because there's nothing in that cell. We then drag it down a bit. We get loads more zeros, again, understandable. But then when we actually start getting into cells which have content in them, we start getting numbers. So we're just going to drag this all the way down to the bottom. So we hit 158. Many without numbers, some with numbers. Now, what I want to do is I want to get rid of all of the rows where that B column has a 0. And the way we do that is by using a sort command. Just before we start using the sort command, I'm just going to get rid of this first row here, the current row 1. I'll make that clear to you why in a second, but I'm just going to highlight that row, right click, and then hit delete. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a sort command. I'm going to select everything in the sheet first of all. I'm then going to go to sort. I'm then going to go to custom sort. And what I want to do is I want to sort by column B, smallest to largest, all the zeros first, and then all the cells with content in. Notice this box here. My data has headers. If I click that box, it stops saying column A and says key. We're wanting to sort by column B, which we know is length. For length, we click there. We go from smallest to largest. They're all our zeros. We don't need this. So we highlight all this data and we delete it. Now, for the way we wrote up this study, these two small bits of data here where someone put a hyphen and someone put a no, we made a note of that, but we decided not to analyze those. So we right click and we delete. And now we just have the participants who gave us data. So what I'm just going to do now is I'm going to put them back in the order they came in. So it corresponds to that original sheet. So if you see at the moment, this key isn't in numerical order because this key is going from smallest to largest. So we're just going to flip that back around. So again, we go sort, we go custom sort. We were sorting on B. Our data does have headers. We're now going to sort on key, and that will put that back in number order. We go from 6 to 158. Those numbers aren't necessarily the world's most intuitive. So I'm just going to add in another column here. I'm going to call it key 2. And I'm just going to write in 1 and 2. We're going to highlight, and we're going to drag down. And notice that we've got these 24 participants. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start analyzing the data. At the moment, the data's in column D, and you'll notice that the data is looking a little bit inaccessible. So one of the things we'll do is we'll right-click, we'll select column width, we'll change the column width from a 1 to something significantly larger, let's say 75. That's still not showing us everything that we'd like to. So another thing you could do, you could select everything. Now, the way I did the tidying on this sheet, I put in a row height command, which shrunk everything down. So I'm just going to change that. Row height at the moment is going to come up as 15. We're going to change that to 100. Don't worry about that. You won't have to do that. And then I'm going to just double click and it will shrink everything back down. Now, your first task, whenever you're looking at the data, is just to read it. Okay, so we've got all this quali data in column D, and we've got 24 participants telling us about this question. Do you have any thoughts about what format this learning should take that would best enable students to understand more about these challenges and how to address them? That is the question that we ask participants. We want to know more about the answers they gave us, and we want to know more about the themes, the categories, the clusters of material that they produced. And the first thing to do is very simply to read everything. To read everything, to not take any notes, just to read it through and to kind of, what kind of things are we seeing? What kind of patterns are we seeing? What kind of themes? What kind of clusters? what kind of collections of material. Read it once, read it twice. Maybe on the second time, just start taking notes about what are we seeing. I've already done this. This paper's already out. And eventually, what we start to do is we start to code. And the way I like to do that in Excel is very simply go through the rows. Each row represents a participant, row by row, and identifying the text that relates to different themes, to different clusters, to different kind of buckets of meaning. And there's no better way to do this than really to start with the first one. So uh, let's read this first one together. I like the idea of the enactor society and the difference the members can make in the world. I wonder if groups, hubs of students can take on practical projects and make both links with their learning and the real world and how things can change. Okay. What kind of things are we picking up here? For me, I think there's a couple of things. Uh, it's talking about things being practical and team based. There's also this kind of idea of the enactor society, not something I'd heard of before, um, but they're talking about a specific course, a really particular idea. And uh, then, really, what the key thing to do is to just highlight the text which is relevant to that material and to drag and drop that into the cell. So, in terms of things being practical and team based, we're just dragging and dropping in the text which comes from the cell. Now, I'll admit to you here, I'm slightly cheating in terms of how I'm dragging that text in, but let me show you how you can do it in a more manual way. So we go over here and actually we just highlight in the box here the relevant bits of text, practical, team based. I mean, really, it's the whole cell. So we grab it, we control C it, we paste it in there, and then we type in control V. It's pasted in there. Specific course, specific idea. Well, that's this thing here. I like the idea of the enactor society. We drag that and we drop that in here. Now, do you see what just happened there? Excel kind of goes, oh, I need to fit that all in a box. I need to make that all nice and neat in its head, which actually in reality makes things a bit tricky and a bit awkward. The way you stop it doing that, when it does that, you just go onto the Home tab and you just hit Wrap Text and it spreads it all back out. I'm just going to bold these themes, these clusters of meaning that we're starting to talk about here, and just going to wrap those so we can see that. Okay, what does the second one say? Perhaps best as some sort of online course that can be completed individually at one's own rate, due to the fact that many people wouldn't attend if it was live in person or online session due to it being optional. Okay, that's interesting. Again, we've got some different things going on here. I think there's a couple of interesting things in terms of themes. One, they're talking about things being online, and the other, this notion of the importance of things being done in their own time or of being optional. So these are a couple of potential themes. Again, excuse my slightly cheekiness, pasting that in rather than typing it. But again, um, perhaps better as some sort of online course. So we grab that, we copy that, we drop that in online. That's what that's talking about there. Um, and then, well, actually, for this second, this thing about emphasizing own time or optionality, again, we might just put in everything. So we drop that in. Okay. Third one. We have a relatively high number of learning hours and homework to do as mechanical engineering students. However, I believe that additional free to come to lectures multiple times a week, allowing all timetables to be able to join. I would especially appreciate the opportunity to join lectures which discuss social issues like racism and discrimination. Ooh, okay. So we've got a couple of things. Notice we now have some shared themes. We've got this idea of additional free to come to lectures, which I think kind of replicates something we've talked about before in terms of it kind of being optional. So we'll grab that. However, but also that similar text starts really talking about format. And I think that format is probably really interesting. We're talking about lectures and talks. We'll grab that free to come to lectures, and actually lectures in there twice. So we'll just grab a bit more text there. And so this is how it works. You keep going through row by row, identifying these themes, these clusters, these pieces of meaning, which you identify in the raw data. Now, notice that so far we've gone through 3 uh, participants, and actually we've got 5 individual themes or buckets, and it's only in that last one that we've started to have a certain amount of shared content. We've got that shared content about things being done in their own time or being optional. So rather than spending the whole video going through each of these 24 participants, we are going to do here's one I prepared earlier, trick, which, showing my age, is a phrase we borrow from Blue Peter. So if we just skip over onto sheet 2, you will see not only the cells that the rows that we had analysed, but also all of the rows, all 24 of the rows. And obviously, as we've done that, the number of themes that we've generated have also increased. So I think we'd got up to these 5 to begin with, but as we keep going through, sometimes participants were really wanting to get information from experts, either individuals or organizations. Some people were wanting kind of like to look at maybe have access to information online, static emails or information on websites. Some people didn't really want lectures, they wanted workshops or seminars. Some people talked about a certificate for taking part. Some people were quite clear about not wanting experts, actually wanting a much more open format. Some people talked about things being standalone modules or standalone courses. Some people talked about them being integrated into their existing subject-based modules, and just slightly different to this open format. A few participants were quite keen to emphasize the importance of them being able to make up their own minds themselves. So that's the kind of data that we got from this analysis. But at the moment, it's just like, well, what do we talk about? What do we emphasize? Now, different quality traditions and different quality methodologies do this in a different way. One of the things that I like to do is I like to try and make sure I'm talking about the things that come up most. Trying to respect my participants and kind of saying, if most of my participants said this, I want to make sure I'm saying this in my write-up. And actually, because we've analyzed our data in this way, Excel gives us the ability to know what came up most. Because at the moment, might be a little bit difficult to see on the screen. Very simply, a way to do this is to add in an extra row at the top. So we just select row 1, we hit insert, it adds in that extra row. And then we very, very simply do a count command. We want to count. There are various count commands you can do in Excel, and count A tells you how many cells are not empty. So how many cells have got something in. And so we're going to look at this column E, and we're going to look from cell 3 to cell 100. It really doesn't matter because most of them are going to be empty. So that's cell 3 to cell 100. Close the brackets, hit return, and it's going to tell us how many of our participants talked about things being practical and team-based, because that first participant did. And the grand total is just that participant. Okay, fair enough. Let's look at the other columns. Now, very simply, if you've got a formula that you like and you want to put it in other columns, all you do is you press Control C to copy it. You select all of the cells you want. And here I'm pressing Shift and then the right arrow key. So I'm selecting them all, and then I press Control V, and it will copy that formula into each of the columns, changing the name of the column as it goes. So it doesn't give me E3 to 100 in all of them. It changes it to F3, G3, etc. Now, what you notice is that, okay, in terms of practical and team-based, that was only mentioned once, but things being online was mentioned 10 times. Workshops and seminars was mentioned 8 times. Experts, individuals or groups, was mentioned 5 times. Other things were only mentioned once or twice. And so, again, if we're respecting the amount of information that came up most often, we probably want to emphasize those larger numbers more often. If you've got quite a few themes, this many or any more, you might want to sort your data so that it puts those with the most numbers first. And actually, again, in Excel, that's quite easy to do. What you do is you select your columns with data in. So you don't select the whole sheet. You just select the columns with data in and which have numbers, which have counts in them. Then we go to our magic sort button again to custom sort. Now, previously, when we were doing custom sort, we were sorting by rows. Now we're going to sort by columns. The way you do this, you click options. It says, oh, hang on, we were sorting top to bottom, and now we want to sort from left to right. Top to bottom, rows, left to right, columns. We're going to sort by row 1 because it's got all those numbers in, and we want the largest number on the left, the smallest number on the right, largest, smallest. Boom, boom. And it's just swapped it all around. It's telling us the stuff which came up most in column E, the stuff that came up least in columns P and Q. And this is potentially helpful in telling us how we write this up. What we might also want to do is we might want to check that the way we've sorted our data, the way we've gathered things together, is consistent. And if you've got more than 24 participants, let's say you've got 50 or 100, your data might be spread around lots of different rows. And what you might want to do is kind of go, oh, I'd really like to read all of the comments related to workshops and seminars at any one time. And actually, again, you can do that quite easily using a sort command. So what we do here is we select everything. Now, because we've got these 2 columns now, which are kind of headers, we have to be a little bit more sensitive when we're selecting our data. If we just select everything and then says does contain headers, it's going to move row 2 around because it doesn't realize that's the second header column. So what we actually do is we select all of our data. It takes a second, like that. This is the data we want to sort. We hit sort again. We go to custom sort again. Remember, we were previously on columns. Now we're going back to rows. So we go back to options. We were left to right. We're now going top to bottom. And let's say that we want to sort things in terms of, well, we mentioned workshops and seminars. So that's column F. We make sure my data has headers isn't clicked because we're not selecting either of these 2 rows up here. We then say, let's have a look at column F. Boom. We click OK. Boom. And notice what it does is it makes sure that these first 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows contain all the data which was relevant to this topic. And then if we go down here, these are empty. Now, they get a bit of overlap from other cells, but there's no information in them. Now, this theme, this cluster, this little bucket of information is actually very straightforward. There's not a lot of information that is going on here. We can just click through and see that specifically some people are going to have been talking about seminars or workshops. So let's have a look. So in lectures or seminars, be through Zoom or Team by having workshops, online learning workshops, 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 interactive seminars, workshops on campus, workshops to connect. It's like, that's pretty consistent. Pretty consistent information. We know we are solid with that theme. We know out of our data set, there are 8 participants who are kind of going, workshops or seminars is the kind of thing I want to be doing. Now, what you'll also notice, if we go back up to the top here, this participant said certain lectures or seminars. Now, we didn't cluster workshops and lectures as the same thing. We clustered those as separate things. But if we scroll across here, we'll also notice that lectures is also recorded under this theme as well. So, participants talking about those two related but different format, lectures and workshops, are recorded twice under those two different areas. So that's a good way to kind of check the integrity of your data. And really, one of the reasons for analyzing data like this using Excel is if you're doing a group-based project, or if you're showing your data to your supervisor can really get into and see your workings, and give you good feedback about the kind of information that you are doing and working on together. So what do we have? We've got some information about the kind of different learning formats, workshops, lectures. We've also got information about how it would take place. There's this clear kind of like, we want this stuff to be online. We've got this idea that we want it to be something which is optional, something that can be done in our own time. We've got this distinction between definitely want experts being involved versus actually we want it in an open format. We don't want experts. Some people wanting it integrated into their courses, some people wanting it to be standalone. Some people, a very small number of people kind of talking about kind of, oh, I want a certificate for taking part, or, I particularly want it to be team-based. And if we're kind of following that, oh, let's prioritize things which are talked about most, it may be that you've only got a limited amount of room to write up this material in. It may be that some of the material that's talked about less gets excluded from the write-up, unless, of course, it's very significant, and then there are probably reasons for including it. Just one last thing before we go back to the write-up of this paper and see how it compares to this sheet. Do you remember earlier we used the len command to calculate the number of characters in each of these cells? Well, what you can do is you can very easily just get the average of all of that. You just type in an equal sign, then average, then you open your brackets, and then you select your cells, close the brackets, hit return. 173.45. We'll average that down to 173. Let's have a look at the manuscript. So here's that manuscript. Here is the section in the paper that talks about the write-up we were just looking at. Let's just highlight a few things. In terms of question 2, 24 participants. The average response length was 173 characters. Most people preferred the learning to be online. Other people talked about workshops and seminars. Lectures was only mentioned a certain number of times. Some people talked about wanting to hear from experts. Others actually made it clear that they wanted to talk about these issues amongst themselves. Some people talked about it being important to be opt-in or voluntary in their own time. Others saying that they wanted it to be integrated into their course or other stand-alone modules. As it says there at the end in blue, in short, in terms of learning format, there was a significant diversity of opinion. I think that's definitely true to say amongst just those 24 participants. There was a lot of variation in what people said, even in that really, really thin data. On average, people just gave us 28 words. Really, really thin data. And yet we got all this information out of it. Anyway, hopefully this just gives you a little bit of information about how you can get your raw data, how you can add a key, reduce it down, start analyzing it, and end up with some themes, a number of examples of those themes, and how you then might think to start structuring it for a write-up. Thank you very much for your time.